The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. Don't adjust your sets. We are back for a second straight day of the Hard Rock Empire here on the Nerdcast Empire. Great to be along with you. I am Matt in the studio. Got another great night of music. We are talking the music of May the 2nd, 2025 this week as we bring you 2 episodes of the Hard Rock Empire on this holiday weekend. Hopefully all of our U.S. followers enjoying that long weekend. And if you're not one of our U.S. followers, hopefully you don't have to work tomorrow. Maybe take a long weekend anyway. But kind of getting back to our normal format, we've got news headlines to get things started, and then we'll talk that new music, and then a couple of albums in the vault, and finally we'll wrap things up with the Power Trio. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. I feel like we just did this, so definitely making up for some lost time here. The music of May 2nd was interesting. Maybe not as deep as far as what we saw the week before on yesterday's show, but still some good stuff. And you know, sometimes it's as much about finding good music. I think you also finding interesting music is definitely a cool aspect of this.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a fair way to put it, that there was maybe more depth in the good music on yesterday's episode, the music of April 25th, which you can catch that episode both on Twitch and on YouTube on the VOD. There was maybe not as much good music this week, but the stuff that was there was different sounding than a lot of the stuff that we typically get in a given week. So I like that. It's a good balance. Yeah. It gives you something a little bit different and a chance, I think, for both of us to kind of pick some things maybe a little out of our wheelhouse. But overall, you know, there was still some really good stuff. And of course, when we get around to the new music segment, we'll post Mike's playlist. You can check out all the music from May the 2nd and find something that might speak to you on that playlist. But we're going to get to some news headlines before we get to the new music, and nothing really too pressing in the news headlines today, but this first one is just kind of interesting. This is an article from Metal Injection talking about the band Sleep Token. Their new album, Even in Arcadia, has been announced as the #1 album in the U.S. on the Billboard Top 200, breaking several records. Some of those hadn't been around for very long, but according to the service called Illuminate, which is used to track album and vinyl sales, it beat the record for most vinyl sold by a hard rock band with 47,000. Ghost had just broken that record just a couple of weeks prior with their new album. It also was the largest streaming week ever for a hard rock album. And, you know, obviously, I know of Sleep Token. I haven't listened to a ton of their stuff, but it is interesting that we have another band that kind of has this, I hate to say gimmick because sometimes that comes off as being a negative. They have this thing that is their thing in addition to their music, and it's clearly hitting with people because, and obviously you have to have a good album too, but people are coming out and supporting this in droves, and certainly happy for those guys that they were able to do this, but it's kind of fascinating that these are the acts that are kind of breaking through right now. And we're talking Billboard 200. That's all of music. And these guys got to #1.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed. I guess in some way you could suggest that maybe rock isn't dead because you got both Ghost and Sleep Token topping the charts. I remember when these guys first started becoming big and just kind of thinking, I'm not a big modern metal guy, but they're getting a lot of buzz. They seem to have this whole mythos around them and lore behind what they're doing. So in that respect, it could be cool, not too dissimilar from other bands that I do like, your Guars, your Ghosts. It just makes me wonder because there are so many hard rock and metal bands out there that don't have that level of kind of theatricality to them that aren't seeing that same level of success. Like, is that really a necessary component? I don't know.
I mean, it's one of those things that you just have to wonder, what is that thing that allows you to break through from being, you know, because a lot of the bands we talk about get decent sales on Bandcamp or they get decent streams, but it's like, how do you get to that next level where you're topping the Billboard Top 200? Obviously, there's several levels in between, but it's fascinating to me that it does seem the new thing is the old thing. You know, the thing that's coming back around is something we saw really originally in the 1970s when you think of someone like David Bowie and, you know, Ziggy Stardust. And then, of course, we got the Kiss and everything they did with the makeup. And it was taking an artist that clearly has talent and coming up with this thing that just draws so many more eyeballs. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Sleep Token that was the one that did the viral video with the meteorologist in Raleigh, right?
Yeah, I believe it was.
So it's like, in addition to, as you said, the mythos, like you also have these kind of viral things that these bands are trying out, and kudos to them because it clearly has worked for them.
Yeah, for sure. I do think it's funny reading the article, though, talking about this Luminate that's been used to track album and vinyl sales since 1991. It's like, okay, so if they've been around since 1991, it's not too surprising that you have bands breaking the record for vinyl sales.
Yeah.
Because there was a good period of time there between 1991 and 2025 where people weren't buying vinyl. So,
well, and maybe even more than that was the fact that clearly somebody stopped tracking vinyl sales that allowed these guys to fill in, probably Billboard themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, nobody's making vinyl in 1991. Why? We don't need to track this anymore. So it is kind of that, not only was there a big period from 91 to say maybe 2005, 2010, where vinyl just completely disappeared for the most part, but also these guys came in to fill a void that was deemed no longer needed by the bigger companies out there.
Absolutely. But kind of my point, too, is that had vinyl sales not cratered for so many years, it's like maybe 47,000 vinyl sales since the release wouldn't sound like such a huge number.
Yeah.
I mean, it would still be respectable, I'm sure, but you can't really compare it to a lot of the albums that have released in the past 25 years because there's just nothing to compare to.
And you just wonder how long something like this lasts. The next time Metallica releases an album, the next time, Foo Fighters release an album and they decide to do these vinyls on top of their digital downloads and CDs, you have to think a band like that would just put that number just way out of reach. Because, we just watched a video with Kirk Hammett talking about the load collection, all the stuff you get with that. Like, I would think if when and if they release a new album, they'll have some crazy deluxe vinyl collection with that, and that number will probably be way out there then.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder. Clearly, I would assume Sleep Token really emphasized, and so did Ghost, the vinyl sale side of it. I don't know if every band necessarily does that to that degree, so that could play a factor too. Or maybe I'm also still kind of underestimating the support and kind of the fan intensity for these newer acts.
I just want to know who's keeping track of cassette sales in 2025.
Somebody is, I'm sure, for some reason.
Cassettes are supposedly making a comeback. I don't know why, but anyway. But, kudos to Sleep Token. Clearly found something that has helped them out, and certainly wish them the most success with this album. And I get the feeling we haven't seen this come across our playlist yet based on how the timeline, because we had Ghost yesterday, and this was 2 weeks after Ghost, so my guess is our next episode that we do, we'll see the Sleep Token album come up. So
yeah, definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, definitely interested to see what it sounds like, so kudos to them. A couple of job changes on the last two news items, and this one, if you've been following along, because we've been talking about Foreigner quite a bit, probably isn't going to surprise anybody too much. It kind of felt like the writing might have been on the wall here, but Kelly Hanson has decided he's leaving Foreigner, and obviously there's been a lot going on with their Latin American tour, their South American tour, where they've had one of their band members singing songs in Spanish. They brought in Lou Gramm to do some guest vocals while Hanson wasn't on the tour. And this article, I guess they had them on The Voice earlier this week, the NBC singing competition, and that's where Hanson announced that he was going to pass the torch off to Luis Maldonado and ride off into the sunset. For the most part, he did mention he would try to drop in from time to time for guest spots, but what's interesting to me is, there have been some other articles that basically say, well, I got other things I want to do, or other, rock you want, like, are you going to start another band? I mean, not that, he's ancient, but he's 64. Like, we're starting something new. But anyway, it is interesting because it feels like this almost marks a complete end to an era of Foreigner, with him kind of stepping aside, and Mick Jones obviously kind of stepping off the road as well. That it just feels like this is kind of a new era for the band completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And reading the article, it sounds like he has a lot of things also not music related that he's focusing on. He mentioned that he had a fairly young family he wants to spend time with. Mentions cooking things too, which is kind of interesting, and kind of left it with saying he had other fish he wanted to fry. So clearly, I would assume we're talking some music projects in there as well. I mean, maybe he'll get back together with Hurricane. I don't know. Any number of things. The guy's a tremendous lead singer, though. Yeah. So I just wondered, and I've speculated about it a lot, like, how long are you really content singing? Because, I mean, Foreigner wasn't creating new music for the most part.
Yeah.
They were just singing the hits, and how long are you content just singing somebody else's greatest hits?
And that's just it. When you think of how long he was in the band, and he's still singing somebody else's greatest hits. Like, you know, it wasn't like Van Halen where, you know, Sammy Hagar was able to come in and create his own greatest hits that he could then go on to sing. Like, this guy's still singing the stuff that Lou Gramm made famous.
And that's the funny thing. Like, if you look at his discography with Foreigner, starting in 2006, you have extended versions live, No End in Sight, Can't Slow Down when it's live, extended versions 2 live, acoustic, the classics unplugged, Jukebox Heroes, An Acoustic Evening with Foreigner, I Want to Know What Love Is, the ballads, Greatest Hits Live, In Concert Unplugged, 40 hits from 40 years, with the 21st Century Symphony Orchestra and Chorus live, Double Vision Then and Now live reloaded. So, I mean,
they tried
a whole lot of live and classics compilations, it sounds like.
Yeah, they had a couple of new albums in there, but clearly they didn't hit real well because they immediately went back to live and re-records and compilations, so that is pretty telling.
Yeah, their 2009 album, Can't Slow Down, was given a negative review from BBC, got what looks like a 5 out of 10 from NU.NL, and 3.5 stars from AllMusic, so, you know,
not
it was
great.
what it was. Yeah.
Just want to throw this out there. There is a band on our list today that is looking for a lead singer. So, you know, Kelly Hanson, give him a call.
Fit, actually.
I think it actually would be. Give them a call. They're in Olympia, Washington. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but maybe that needs to happen. But yeah, I mean, my immediate thought is, you know, maybe a Hurricane reunion. Maybe someone at Frontiers Records picks up the phone and says, "Hey, man, I got this really great young band that's looking for a lead singer, and we got an album coming out later this year." I mean, we're not going to be shocked if he shows up on a Frontiers release sometime later
not at all.
2025, because to me, perfect.
Maybe he's going to get together with Josh Freese, and they're going to have a project together.
That's possible. Like,
you know, never know.
Any number of things could happen, but again, Foreigner will continue on. Best of luck to Luis Maldonado. If you're wanting to see the band with Hanson or Graham, you know, kind of keep an eye on the lineups. They may come around occasionally, but it's a new band now for sure. But they're going to continue to perform. It's one of those questions we talk about all the time. Like, at what point is it not really Foreigner anymore? And, you know, you could make a case that with Hanson it still was, because he was with them for a long time. And, of course, Mick Jones was still there. And now they're not. So,
yeah.
You know, is it Foreigner or is it a Foreigner tribute act now? It's not for me to decide, thankfully, but just something to keep in mind. Another news item that had to do with a job loss, if you will, was the news that the Foo Fighters have dismissed their drummer. Of course, obviously, Josh Freese, as Mike just mentioned, was in a tough spot, obviously, coming in for the after the passing of Taylor Hawkins 2 years ago. And by all accounts, incredibly talented guy, came in, did an amazing job, to the point where in the article that I linked, you know, everybody knew he was going to get this job before he got the call that he was going to get it. Like, you're going to do this. And, you know, he did it for 2 years. And, you know, the band obviously wants to move into a different direction. And you know, certainly within their rights to do that. It is, and then he basically said as much as well, but kind of crazy, because, again, the guy's really talented, and, you know, now he probably won't be looking for work for long. Somebody's going to pick him up, and now Foo Fighters is looking for a new drummer.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he wasn't given a better reason behind his termination beyond just, hey, we're going in a different direction. Like, I can only assume they just didn't want his replacement to be leaked, and that's why they didn't give any more detail, or maybe they just didn't know who they wanted. But you wouldn't get rid of the guy if you didn't have a plan in mind, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just think someone who's clearly just super over in the community, well-respected guy, has been on just dozens and dozens of albums, even just making an appearance. You just kind of feel like he deserved a little more than like a, hey, we're moving in a different direction.
And if the different direction is just Dave Grohl stepping behind the drum kit and pulling a Phil Collins or a Don Henley, where it's just like, well, I'm going to front the band from behind the kit, you can just say that. Like, that's okay. Like, and nobody would blame Dave Grohl if he just decided, it's kind of like the later episodes of The Office when they're looking for the new manager of The Office, and then Dwight decides that he's actually the only guy who can do the job.
Exactly.
It's just one of those things where it's like, it would be hard in the eyes. And again, it's in the article as well that, Josh Freese basically said as much. Like, this is Dave Grohl. Like, he's the drummer. He's the guy. And, maybe that's what they're going to decide to do. But again, if that's the case, he would still be disappointed for losing the gig, but he would totally understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of speculation as to who the next drummer is going to be. I mean, there are people who kind of think it might end up going to Shane Hawkins. Taylor Hawkins' son. That would make a lot of sense, and probably something you might want to keep as kind of a surprise and unveil it like it's a big deal. There's a Loudwire article kind of speculating on who the next drummer could be, and it's kind of a lot of like the big name guys from kind of that era, like your Matt Camerons from Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, Frank Ferrer, who played with Guns N' Roses for quite a long time, Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine, Matt Chamberlain from
I know
Pearl Jam, played with David Bowie, Elton John, Wallflowers, Chad Smith. That seems kind of unlikely. Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer.
Sure.
But I just, it's kind of wild because, looking at Josh Freese's credentials, the dude did a lot of work with the Vandals, played with a Perfect Circle. He was their drummer, had a brief stint with Guns N' Roses, and then a crazy amount of just appearances on other albums. Just kind of going through the Wikipedia to see where all he's shown up is pretty amazing. And some of the ones that stood out to me, you have Suicidal Tendencies, Art of Rebellion, Devo, the Tank Girl soundtrack, New Radicals, Maybe You've Been Brainwashed Too, classic album, Puddle of Mud, Come Clean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Once More with Feeling, the musical episode soundtrack. He played the drums and I think guitar on that as well.
Oh, that's crazy.
Rob Zombie, The Sinister Urge, Unwritten Law, Elva, The Offspring, Splinter, Good Charlotte, The Young and the Hopeless, even a Bees album, amazingly enough.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so the guy is definitely a heavy hitter in the industry, and just kind of weird to think he would get kind of unceremoniously dropped.
Well, and you're right. If it is going to be Taylor Hawkins' son, that would make a lot of sense. We saw that with the Eagles, where they brought in Deacon Fry to play Glenn Fry's parts after he passed away. And I think he's still touring with the band. So, there's a precedent for that. And, Van Halen as well, with Wolfgang coming in after the fact. So, you get that. And, I would see where that would want to be a surprise. But at the same time, like, if you've got a good relationship with the guy, wouldn't you just make him sign an NDA and just be like, hey, man, like, this is what's happening. Like, I know it's going to be disappointing, but you understand. And I think he would understand. But, he's not going to be out of work for long. He's probably already working with somebody.
Yeah. Or you just you bring him in and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to announce that we're getting rid of you until the time comes we're ready to announce the replacement.
Yeah.
That way there's not that weird overlap and weeks of speculation as to who the new guy is.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of strange. But again, that they're certainly inclined to do that. And like I said, he's not going to be hurting for work.
No.
At all, so I'm sure it would not surprise me if sometime before the end of the calendar year we don't talk about a band on this podcast that has him involved with their album production. So, but interesting story nonetheless. Just a reminder, check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Of course, you can listen to past podcasts there. You can check out our store while you're there. Lots of good stuff going on there. News podcast, again, will probably be back in a little over a week. Going to continue to work on getting a time set in so we can lock that in and get back to a regular schedule on that front, but that'll be coming up. I would expect it to move to the evenings. probably next week, but we'll let you know for sure. We'll be back next weekend with at least one episode of the Hard Rock Empire. We'll let you know whether we do another double shot. If not, it'll be one. It'll be on Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern, as always. And the next episode will be the music of May the 9th. So definitely look forward to that. Should be another good week in music, but we'll be talking about that coming up the next time we join you for the Hard Rock Empire. And that is probably a good advertisement for the Discord, which I will post the link in both of the chats, because that is obviously our social media. We are pretty much everywhere on social media, so that is always a way to find out when we're going to be on the air. But Discord is a good way as well. We'll have reminders in there when we're going to stream, so certainly join the Discord. We would definitely appreciate it. A lot of cool stuff in there, and also when we do stuff kind of individually, you'll get notifications as well. So definitely check that out. But it is time to get to the new music of May the 2nd. Again, we got to go through this explanation every week, but you never know. There could be a first-time listener swinging by, so we will explain how it all works, and I will be posting a playlist in the chat once my computer catches up to me. But basically, each and every week, Mike goes through, and he will go through different sources of all the new music for the given week, and then he will create a YouTube playlist that has all of that music on the playlist and basically one song from every new album. And then we go through and listen to those songs, and then we pick our favorite new albums of the week. And like Mike said, maybe not the depth that we had on yesterday's episode, because honestly, that was just a ridiculously loaded, unusually loaded day. Not normal. But I think there's a lot of really good music this week. And like Mike said, I think there's a lot of stuff that's a little bit different than maybe some of the stuff we typically get, which those are fun weeks as well. So with that said, it is time to get to the new music for this week. And Mike, as always, you have 2 picks. So let's get us started with the new music with pick number 1.
Yeah, I feel like I've been kind of leaning pretty heavily into kind of the traditional metal, thrash, speed stuff lately, and kind of going through the playlist this week, I stumbled into this band, and they just had such a different look and presentation, and kind of more of like the glam sleaze punk kind of thing going on, and it caught my attention, and I definitely gave them a listen. And anytime a band is willing to do a cover of Livin' La Vida Loca, I think that's always a plus too. So that being said, this is the latest album from the UK glam, sleaze, punk, whatever you want to call them, rock band. The band is Gypsy Pistoleros, and the album is Church of the Pistoleros.
Yeah, this was not something I was ready for, honestly. And
it was weird.
It was weird, but it's so good. And their cover is really well done. They did an outstanding job with it.
Yeah, not necessarily a song I would choose to cover, but if I wanted it covered, this is kind of how I'd expect it to be done, so no complaints.
Yeah, for sure.
Band's made up of Gypsy Lee Pistolero on vocals, Carrie Pistolero White on bass and backing vocals, Shane Pistolero Sparks on guitar and backing vocals, and believe it or not, Pip Pistolero Sampson on drums. They're all related, apparently. Who knew? Or they all share one name out of their I don't know what's going on with that, to be honest. Band's been around quite a while now, touting on their website. They had 5 straight appearances at the Rocklahoma Festival from 2007 to 2011. They've toured with bands such as LA Guns, Faster Pussycat, Adler's Appetite, UFO, Motorhead, Rat, Twisted Sister, Poison, Skid Row, Slaughter, etc. This is just fun, kind of sleazy, punk, hard rock music. It's just, it fits in with a lot of those bands that they've toured with. I think anytime you kind of have a more modern band harkening back to those days, it's a cool thing. And these guys definitely do it. They got a very fun presentation. If you go to their website, they have this whole mission statement, kind of creed thing going on about how they conduct business. And included with that is a list of 10 commandments, which is basically be rebellious, rock hard, just that kind of hard rock rebellious spirit thing going on. But what was weird about it is, as I read them, I noticed there were only 9 of them. I don't know if that was a formatting issue or what, but maybe that was just another way to say, hey, we're not going to conform to your rules, or our 10 commandments will actually, in fact, only be 9 commandments. Yeah, you listen to them and you kind of get, at times with Gypsy's voice, it feels like a young Vince Neil, like really old school Motley Crue, which is never a bad thing either. It's some of their best stuff. Yeah, and like I mentioned, they have the cover of Livin' La Vida Loca, so take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Standout tracks on the album include Shadow Walker, Whatever Happened to the Old Town, Last of the Comancheros, The Prayer, and the song that I picked to listen to, the title track, Church of the Pistoleros.
And a good time to remind you once again, the best way to get to hear the music clips on our podcast is to be here live every Sunday night at 7. The next best is the VODs on Twitch and YouTube. If you listen to the podcast version, you will not get the music clips, but you'll get the rest of our podcast and our opinions. But joining us live, obviously the best way to get to hear the music. With that said, it is time to listen to the Gypsy Pistoleros. This is their new album, Church of the Pistoleros, and this is the opening track off of that album, which is Church of the Pistoleros. So let's listen to a little bit of that now.
For the lost and the unforgiven, the wasted, the poor, and the forgotten living. Walk into the church of the Pistoleros. Come and take my hand, all you beautiful widows. Walk into the church of the Pistoleros, for the lost and the strange and the mad to those. Why can't we believe you? When I walked.
One thing worth mentioning, if you're not watching us on YouTube or Twitch, is you need to check out the album art for this.
Yeah.
Really well done. Clearly very creative, and it definitely stands out amongst the artwork for the week. Definitely hear the Vince Neil comparisons there. And like you said, young Vince Neil that really could go. But again, it's just fun rock music, and man, we need as much of that as possible. And this is, like I said, what I've heard of this album so far is just really fun, and looking forward to getting a chance to listen to the rest of it.
Yeah, for sure. And cool to think that they had played Rocklahoma that many years. Kind of back when Rocklahoma was a little more geared toward kind of the hair metal festival vibe that they had for a while before kind of conforming to what all hard rock festivals are here in the States.
For sure. I definitely would go to a festival that had these guys on the bill, because you know you're going to get some variety as well. So definitely check those guys out. Church of the Pistoleros, really good stuff for Mike's first pick of the week. As always, you have 2 picks. What is pick number 2?
Yeah, so pick number 2, we're kind of drifting back into more of the new wave of traditional heavy metal stuff. This is the debut album from a multinational heavy metal band, having members from Croatia, Serbia, and the United Kingdom. The band is Power Surge, and their album is Shadow's Warning.
You definitely kind of know what you're in for with the album art here. I'm not going to be shocked to hear the description of this band and the song when you get a chance to hear it.
Yeah, it definitely just looks like something you would see on like the traditional heavy metal YouTube channel that posts all the full albums. Like not shocking at all. This band started in 2024. Consists of Radek Koval on bass, Milan Jajina on drums, Sergeant Bilak on guitars, Calvin Lever on guitars, and Roko Nikolic on vocals. After the success of some of their early demos, they found themselves opening for the power metal band Fifth Angel, which is certainly awesome. And not long after that, they received a record deal through FHM Records and a spot on this fall's Keep It True Rising Festival, which happens in October, which I'm sure would be a really cool bill as well.
For sure.
Listening to the album, if you compare it to the debuts of some of your favorite bands, it's kind of hard to believe that this is their debut. Like it sounds so well produced. Like the music's really tight. It's just, you would think these guys have been at it for 10 years, but no, this is album 1 after a couple singles. It's another band that you could kind of see moving into the forefront of that traditional heavy metal movement for years to come, kind of depending on where they go. I'm really anxious to hear what comes next from these guys, because if this is the starting point, where do you go from here? It's wild, because this album is just so solid from front to back. Standout tracks on the album include A Dream into a Nightmare, With the Dawning, Calm Before the Storm, Last Man Standing, and the track that I picked to listen to, the title track as well, Shadow's Warning.
Let's check this out. This is Power Surge with the new album Shadow's Warning, and the opening track, which is the title track, Shadow's Warning. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. You're think the biggest compliment I can pay that album, it is exactly what I thought it would sound like based on the album art. Like it is clearly whoever, whether they put the album art together or they hired somebody to do it, they were like, here, listen to this and tell me what this should look like. And that is exactly what the album looks like. It's really good. And you're right. There's a polish level to that doesn't seem to be. And honestly, the weird thing is both of my picks are also first albums, which also kind of benefit from an extra level of polish. And I don't know if that's just an indication of how much more affordable that level of album polish is in 2025 compared to maybe older days where it really was harder to get to that point. But no, these guys, I love that type of music. I love that their band's still making that type of music, and it feels like these guys are surging, if you will. They're on the way up the mountain of rock.
You mentioned it sounding like it looks like based on the album artwork, and people may not realize who haven't gone through the weekly playlists and listened to this stuff that's a big deal, because as you're going track by track and I'm pulling all the songs and listening to them, something will pop up, and obviously first impressions, you're going to build them just off the visual. And there are times where an album artwork will pop up and I'm like, okay, this has potential. I can already tell I'm going to like this. And then the sound just doesn't quite meet the expectations of the art, or maybe it does, but it's still nothing like what I was expecting. And sometimes you're just glad that when you get to a track and you see the art and the sound actually kind of holds up to what you're thinking it's going to be. It's actually a really cool thing.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's always scary when an album pops up and they have the crazy sticks, if you will. The
crazy sticks, all black and white artwork. It just,
you know what you're in for there too, and rarely ever are we wrong about that.
Exactly.
But this is great album. Definitely check these guys out. Power Surge, their new release out on May the 2nd. Really good stuff from them, and again, a band that's certainly only on the way up. I have two albums as well this week. We are starting with a band here in the States. We're going to stay right here in the United States. This is a heavy metal hard rock band from Olympia, Washington, all the way out on the West Coast. This is Hangfire with their first release, Burn. Hangfire, as I mentioned, their first full-length album. The band that performed on this album, and we'll get to why I phrased it that way, is Janaea Fiore on vocals, Sean Searles on guitars, Stephen Tobeck on bass, and Shannon Laird on drums. One of the reviews I saw compared these guys to Judas Priest, Hellion, Burning Witches, and Warlock. The Priest comparisons, I think, are ample. You definitely hear a lot of Priest in that. This was one of those ones that, sometimes we've talked about on this podcast, if you listen over the course of the almost couple years we've been doing this, sometimes the song that's on the playlist is a really good indication, and sometimes maybe it isn't. And to me, this was one of those ones where I thought the album kind of outplayed the playlist track, and it was really good, and there's a lot of talent involved in this band. You get some melodic heavy metal in there, but you also get some great riffs. I thought the guitar playing on this album was really high level, especially for a group. And obviously this is a group of musicians that have been, busy in the scene in Washington. So it's not like these were a bunch of new people, but you can definitely hear the experience come through on the album. A lot of praise for Fiore, certainly rightfully so. I think she's probably going to be someone who really kind of takes off. And I kind of went to her website, saw some things which made me investigate further. And then, unfortunately, it appears that Fiore and the band had a falling out before the release of this album. The band announced her departure on April the 1st. You hate to see that, because obviously I think they really did a great job with this release, and especially as, again, a first release that sounds so good. You just think, man, this band could just really go to new heights. And now you have a singer without a band, and you have a band without a singer. So hopefully, the band is able to find a replacement. Again, Kelly Hanson is available. Just saying, give him a call. And hopefully, everybody involved is able to continue their move forward with success. There's a lot of musical talent on this album. It would really be a shame if this kind of breakup derails any of them in this process. But standout tracks include Thunder, Outlaw, Warhawk, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Hunger. So let's check these guys out now. This is Hangfire with their first release, Burn. This is the opening track off of that album. It is Hunger. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Here she lies in the black of night. They'll build a shrine to feed their hunger. Eyes on tight, but never blind. They'll cross the line to feed their hunger. Fallen to your knees.
And again, certainly, hopefully everything works out for these guys and they're able to kind of figure this all out. But for our first album, they absolutely knocked this out of the park. Mike, your thoughts on Hangfire?
Yeah, it's hard to not, when giving your thoughts, kind of circle back to the turmoil in the band that seemed to have happened. But yeah, the album itself is really good. I think her vocals are great. I think the guitar work on it is outstanding.
Yeah.
I can see where you get kind of the Judas Priest comparisons, because they definitely kind of have that going on as far as the shreddiness of it. Yeah, I just wonder if they wouldn't prefer maybe a singer that wouldn't be as much in the forefront, kind of to better accentuate their guitar sound and not maybe overshadow it. It's hard to say. I mean, I think it's evident that both parties are kind of wanting to go in different directions, and probably better that they split now than years down the road where they might have multiple albums and maybe a little messier royalty situation, something like that.
Yeah, I would agree. If it's clearly not going to work, if they have different goals in mind, then it is better to do it early. It is kind of tough after your first album because you just feel like, man, everything's going great. We got this first album. It's coming out. It's going to do well. It's a great album. And then, this kind of happens. But again, hopefully they're able to kind of get it sorted out and figure out where they want to go from here. And, the talent is there for sure. So hopefully this is not the last we hear of Hangfire. Hopefully we hear more from them in the future for sure. But definitely check this album out. Turmoil aside, it's a great album, so you should definitely check it out. I have two picks as always as well. We are going to head back to Europe, which is where I spend a lot of time. We are headed to epic power metal band from Germany. It is Under Ruins, and this album is Age of the Void. To me, this is another album that looks like the way it sounds. If you look at the album art, I think it definitely fits. This band was formed in 2023. This is also their first full-length album together. They're made up of former members of Landfear and Them. The guitarist is Marcus Ulrich, bassist Alexander Palma. They both work together with Them. Also worked together on an instrumental prog band, A Cosmic Trail, and a speed thrash band, Septagon. Drummer Sasha De Lima Beul comes in from a folk metal band, while guitarist Achim Rauscher was involved in heavy metalers Irony, and then the vocalist is Nuno Miguel de Barros Fernandez from Anguish, who also worked with Landfear. So these pulled a lot of different people from a lot of different places and a lot of different types of music. But it works. Somehow they put it all together and found one common theme, and that was progressive power metal. And that's exactly what you get with this album. You get the bombast that you get with power metal, with the progressive tendencies throughout this album. Angry Metal Guy lists their influences ranging from Manowar to Fate's Warning, which is not too surprising considering the wide range of different influences they brought into this band. But again, just very polished for a first album. This is really well done. Obviously, again, you have another band that has a lot of experience, even though they don't have maybe a lot of experience together. That's how you end up with something so polished. It's well thought out. Complex songs are very well constructed. If you're a fan of prog metal or power metal or prog power metal, you absolutely should check this release out. Standout tracks include 1800 and Froze to Death, Lost Amidst the Unfathomable Abyss, Crimson Seas of Courage, and the song we're going to check out on the podcast, Whispered Curses, Woe Unleashed. So let's check these guys out in case you were unsure whether they were progressive or not. Those are the song titles. We're going to check out Under Ruins from their new album, Age of the Void. This is the 5th track off of this album, Whispered Curses, Woe Unleashed. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Hard part with these guys is sometimes it was hard to find like a chorus to settle in on because it felt like it was more of an ongoing story than like verse, chorus. But again, progressive metal, you get that sometimes. But again, really talented. These guys have come together and put together something that's a lot of fun. Definitely enjoyed this album. Mike, your thoughts on Under Ruins?
Yeah, I'm always for more kind of true metal with a progressive leaning. Not a problem at all. You know, I did want to do a little research because for our picks this week, obviously, with me having Power Surge and you having Under Ruins, those are both signed to the FHM record label. So did a little search on them. They were founded in 2020. They list themselves under their info as being old school metal from fans for fans.
Okay.
Excellent contact to many bands, high quality releases with added value for fans, extra goodies for their own sales, and fairness and transparency. So that is what they tout on their website. They're a German label rooted in Florida. Again, another label that is probably going to be worth keeping an eye on because just in 1 week we had two of our picks emanating from that label and two newer bands that were snatched up pretty quickly too. So these guys clearly are definitely in the acquisition mode of artists.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely excited to see more from this label and definitely excited to see more from Under Ruins as they continue on. But really good stuff from them this week. That's all of our new music for this week. It is time to get to the vault where Mike and I will give you a couple classic albums you need to check out. Mike is literally, again, going through his vault. He has gone through it once before. He is now going through it a second time, letter by letter through the alphabet. We are almost to the halfway point. We are now up to the letter L. Again, probably a lot of great choices for the letter L, but what do you have for your vault pick for this week?
Yeah, so I was kind of going through my collection through the letter L, and I ran into this one, and this is one that it's been a while since I've listened to it, but just kind of looking at the track listing, I was like, man, this album is loaded. Like, it is such a great album, and probably underrated to a large degree. I don't know if this band ever really got the recognition they deserved, because I think in a way they kind of fell under the shadow of what ended up being a much larger band. But that being said, my choice for the vault this week is the second studio album from an LA band. They are LA Guns, and the album is 1989's Cocked and Loaded.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're another one of those bands from that era that just don't get the respect that they deserve for their musicianship. And we've talked about it a little bit on this podcast previously, but this is a band that, I remember this was definitely the first metal concert I saw was LA Guns and Great White and Poison and Rat. And
that was a great lineup for the record.
For the record, it was. And LA Guns blew me away. They were really good. And this album is, like you said, criminally underrated.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of looking through their Wikipedia, I knew they had a tumultuous history, but if you look at the timeline of members of their band, both the original run and the spinoffs, it's pretty impressive, actually. But a lot of really big names. The band itself goes all the way back to 1983. Obviously, Tracy Guns being kind of the big guy behind LA Guns. But at one point, he even paired up with Axl Rose, and that was kind of where the Guns N' Roses name came from, was Axl Rose's band, Hollywood Rose, and Tracy Guns, LA Guns, kind of combining into one thing. Ultimately, Guns was removed from Guns N' Roses and replaced with Slash, and that kind of led to him kind of restarting LA Guns and kind of where we are now. But yeah, this album, so many hits on it, or so many just great songs even beyond the hits. Kind of looking through some of the information on it and some of the reviews. Steve Huey from AllMusic compared the sound to kind of a middle ground between Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue, saying, it manages to balance the underlying darkness of Guns N' Roses' urban outlook with Motley Crue's party anthem glam metal. And yeah, I can kind of feel that. Like, it makes me wonder if maybe that's part of why they feel overlooked or underrated, is that they kind of found this area in between two huge heavy hitters in the industry, and maybe that just led to people not grasping onto them the same way. I don't know, but the album itself, Rolling Stone did name it the 27th best hair metal album of all time. That may be accurate. 27th, I don't really know. I'd have to create a list myself to figure that out.
Sure.
But the album itself, just when you look at the standout tracks, Slap in the Face, Rip and Tear, Sleazy Come, Easy Go, Never Enough, Malaria, The Ballad of Jane, Magdalene, 17 Crash. Obviously, you got the hits that everyone knows, You're Never Enough, Ballad of Jane, but Magdalene, Malaria, great songs as well, Slap in the Face. It's just a tremendous album that I don't know if it really gets the due it deserves.
Yeah, 100%. And it's another band from that era that, because, and part of it is because it's another band that went through a lot of lineup changes, and in the years post their hit success, had, like you said, you go to their Wikipedia page, there's just so many members, and that's not even counting the spin-off bands that had their own members as well. But I think sometimes that hurts the long-term reputation of a band when you think of the bands of that era that, like we saw Extreme, for example. It's like, Extreme is still pretty much Extreme. That I think to some degree kind of helps them because it is the main creative force behind the band that stuck together for so many years. When you have these bands that are like, oh, well, it's Tracy Gunn's LA Guns. And
Steve Riley's LA Guns.
That probably hasn't helped them. But again, there's so many of these albums like this one that came from that era that are known for their hits, and the hits are good, no question. But it's the other stuff off of that album that show you kind of the depth of the band. And unfortunately, again, a lot of that stuff, if you didn't buy the album, you probably never heard a lot of those songs because they weren't going to get on the radio. But these guys are really talented, and it's a shame that maybe more people don't appreciate that.
Yeah, I definitely glad I picked this because it deserved a re-listen from me for sure.
Yeah, it's a great album. Definitely worth checking out. Cocked and Loaded from LA Guns from 1989. Mike's vault pick for this week. Definitely give it a listen. Time to get to my vault pick, and I teased it yesterday by saying that it was a band that I had picked last year for this podcast, which is not a surprise because, of course, my gimmick is I'm going through the Frontiers bands, and I tend to pick a lot of Frontiers bands, so not a big shock there. Going through, spending 2 weeks on each letter. This is my pick for the letter E, and it is The End Machine with their self-titled debut album, The End Machine. This was a band that started in 2019. It was a supergroup, still is a supergroup. Started by George Lynch, Jeff Pilson, Mick Brown, and singer Robert Mason. The goal was to recreate the Dokken sound with Robert Mason as the lead singer. And if you listen to this album and you close your eyes, that's exactly what it sounds like. Like, what if Dokken sounded a little bit like modern Warrant? Like, of course, Robert Mason, now the current singer of Warrant, also was a singer for Lynch Mob. It's exactly what this album sounds like. And, of course, unsurprisingly, it's really good. Steve Brown came in, took over on drums for their second album, Phase 2. And as we talked about this time last year when I picked their new album, The Quantum Phase, Girish Pradhan came in to take the place of Robert Mason for the third album. And it was really good. Like I said, earned a pick on our podcast. I think maybe because you have Robert Mason who took over singing for Warrant, and to some degree, kind of the heart of Dokken, there's a bluesy feel to this album, which I really enjoy. There's definitely those elements as well. It's also probably a little more progressive, I think, than Dokken ever was. Like, 56 minutes for 11 tracks, a couple of songs that are over 6 minutes long, and you kind of feel like they're just kind of moving along. But if you're a fan of these guys, and who isn't, you should check this album out. I think it's really good. Standout tracks, really the whole album is great, but the tracks I enjoyed most were Leap of Faith, No Game, Bulletproof, Hard Road, and Alive Today. Again, here's Frontiers coming in, putting a band like this together, obviously with the help of George Lynch, who kind of made it happen, but just another Frontiers act that is just a lot of fun to listen to. And I guess I need to go back and listen to their middle album now. Since I've listened to the first one and the most recent one, I need to go back and listen to Phase 2 as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised I never took the time to check this out, being a Dokken fan like I am. I think George Lynch is another guy who there was probably a period of time where he was undervalued as a guitarist, and I think a lot of your modern guitar players probably look back on him now and think, man, this guy was a genius because he's such an amazing player. I think it's good that I think people are recognizing that more now than ever.
Oh, for sure. And I think, the fact that, we listened obviously to the album last year that they released, and obviously if you go through and listen to this one, like, you just gain that appreciation, I think, for his talent. Like, all these years later, the guy still brings it, and the stuff sounds just as great as the stuff, I guess, if you want to say in his prime. He would probably say he's still in his prime. But,
sure.
It's just really talented stuff. Definitely encourage people, if you're a fan of Dokken, you should definitely check out The End Machine. Highly recommended. Good stuff from Frontiers. Next week, the randomizer has given me the band Eclipse. So we will be talking about Eclipse next week. Another band.
Like we've talked about them before, too.
I believe we have. I don't remember. Let's see what album they had. They did have a release last year, Megalomanium 2.
Oh yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah, so we're gonna be going back a couple of albums next week on these guys. But this guy's looking forward to that one. It should be another really good one. So that'll be the vault for next week. But we are moving on to the Power Trio. It's how we wrap up every episode of the Hard Rock Empire. And basically, we pose a question, the top 3 of something from music, and we do stretch it out. Obviously, it doesn't have to be metal. It could be rock. It could be pop music, something that's influenced us or something we've talked about on this podcast. And this week, this was kind of inspired by me hearing a song on the radio driving somewhere this week, and it was one of those songs that you just can't get out of your head once you've heard it. And so I thought, well, let's try earworms. Let's pick songs. And I think this is probably as difficult for Mike as it is for anybody, because Mike listens to more music every week than humanly is possible, because he goes through every song on these playlists. So I knew this one might be a little more challenging for you, just because I don't listen to nearly the variety of music that you hear every week. But I was confident that you would come up with 3 choices for this. But before we get to your picks and my picks, looks like Chris has shared his buddy Jordan's picks and as well as his picks. So let's go through those, starting with his buddy Jordan.
Yeah, so his buddy Jordan's picks we have for number 1, Welcome to L.A., the L.A. Knight wrestling entrance theme by Def Rebel.
I can't believe Chris didn't pick that.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. Next, we got Stereo Love by Edward Maya and Vika Gigalina. I'm not totally familiar with that one.
Nope.
And finally, Scotty Doesn't Know by Lustra, which is a popular one. I'm not surprised that ended up on a list.
Sure. Interesting picks for sure. Like I said, I'm shocked that I assume Chris got the picks and then knew he couldn't pick the LA Knight
That's
theme,
certainly possible.
But he's got some interesting picks for his choice of 3.
Yeah, one of his, I could see that one getting stuck in my head as well. But his 3 from Chris, we were looking at number 1, Kiss from a Rose by Seal. Great song, obviously. Number 2, Hunger Strike by Temple of the Dog.
That's a great pick.
That's a tremendous pick. That is easily something that would get stuck in my head. And finally, for number 3, we have Glorified G by Pearl Jam.
Okay. Yeah, Hunger Strike is one that I guarantee if any of us have heard it within the last day or two, we're going around the house singing it in most cases. So that's actually that might be one of the top picks of the
That's a good one.
of the week. I will
Really
have to admit
one.
I'm kind of bummed I didn't think of that one, but You, of course, reach out as well to your buddy Shane. Shane, kudos to him as always for contributing to the podcast. And Shane, if you ever listen to this, you're welcome to join us for this podcast, man. Like
Anytime, man.
anytime, come join us for this, whatever you want. But let's hear what Shane had to say.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Shane's picks, and the second he texted to me, I was like, wait, this is familiar, is that there are a couple repeats from earlier power trios from his picks. And you think, like, that kind of makes sense because these are songs that obviously are going to come up in your mind on other questions as well. Why wouldn't they show up on an earworm kind of topic as well? But for number one for Shane, he has Ed Guy's song Superheroes from their 2005 Superheroes EP and 2006 Rocket Ride.
That's a great choice.
It really is. Can't argue with that one. I think it's, as Ed Guy kind of became more of a hard rock band, this is kind of one of those iconic statement songs from them. Good stuff. Second, number two, we got 3 Days Grace with the song Animal I Have Become from their 2006 album 1X.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that album was huge. That was the first single from the album. And between the main riff and the chorus, I could definitely see you revisiting that after hearing it. Number three, this one's kind of a out of left field one. We have Britney Spears and her song Toxic from the 2003 album In the Zone.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even as far as Britney Spears songs, I don't know if that's the one I would go to. The thing about that is, when I got the text from him saying that, I with all of his picks, I always go to like Wikipedia and get the album info, and I had no idea any of the names of the albums that Britney Spears had after Baby One More Time and Oops, I Did It Again.
Yeah.
No clue. And she had quite a few of them, but those are the only two I remember like seeing the album art and knowing the name of. So, yeah, those are his three picks.
If you'd have told me Baby One More Time was on somebody's list, I could see that.
Yeah, Oops, I Did It Again. I mean, that's,
That is another one, which actually, kind of made me think of another song. I've got a couple of honorable mentions I can mention, but I didn't put on my list because I thought, one, I was sure Chris was going to use and he didn't. But probably because he used it yesterday. But we'll get to that in a moment. But I'm curious to hear what your three picks ended up being.
Yeah, so, I struggled with this. It was kind of a process of just over the course of the week stumbling into one. Like, oh, yeah, that song. That is one that now is, like, stuck here. So for number one for me, I am looking at the song from the band or the group When in Rome, the song The Promise.
Yes.
Off their 1988 album When in Rome.
That's a great choice.
I'm not a big new wave or synth pop guy necessarily, but that chorus, how do you get it out of your head after you hear it?
That was honestly the peak of synth pop.
It really was. It really was. Number two, kind of an underrated song from this band that I love the melody of it, and the chorus is just really cool. And it's a song from the band Live, the song All Over You.
Yeah.
From
now I've got that in my head.
Yeah. It just the kind of the pre-chorus into the chorus, just you can't get it out.
Yeah.
It's from their 94 album Throwing Copper, which obviously also had like Lightning Crashes and I Alone on it. So maybe not to the level of them hit-wise, but super catchy song and easy to get stuck in your head.
Chris, of course, loves Live as well. Are they underrated?
Probably. I don't know if they had a big enough catalog to really... Like, I feel like they didn't release as much music as you feel like they should have.
Yeah. It feels like they should have been much bigger because they were really talented.
I guess they did have a few more albums than I realized. Like, I feel like Throwing Copper and Secret Samadhi from 97, Distance to Here, 99, that was kind of like the heyday. Like, they released 4 other albums after that. 2001's V, 2003 Birds of Prey, 2006 Songs from the Black Mountain, and 2014 The Turn, but I don't really remember those getting much traction.
Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, that's a great pick. So what do you got for your last pick?
Yeah, so for my last one, great band. This may not necessarily be my favorite song of theirs, but it's the one that when I hear it, I tend to go back to it. And that's the song All There Is from Bad Religion.
Yeah.
Like from their 2004 album, The Empire Strikes First. It's just the way it builds up to the chorus and kind of the oohs and the ahs that they throw in there.
Yeah.
It's infectious, and I can't get it out of my head once I hear it.
I probably should have thought about some Bad Religion because a song like Los Angeles is Burning is one that when I hear it, I'm singing it. Like, or anytime the name of the city Los Angeles comes up, or anytime something's on fire, like immediately triggers that song.
All there is, like the second I think of it, I just think and everything. Like then you have to go through the whole chorus. Like it just you can't help it.
That's really good stuff. Those are great choices. As hard as that was, you came up with three really good ones. Chris did have an honorable mention. What's Up by Four Non Blondes. I think that's also a really solid choice. It is definitely one that, no matter what you think of the song, it is one that will absolutely get wedged in there.
Did you ever find out what's going on?
I don't think so. That's why I keep singing about it. The two honorable mention ones that Chris didn't mention, but he will know both of these songs before I get to my three, is Easy Lover.
Sure. He did mention that he avoided it this time.
Okay, he did mention
that.
Yeah. Okay. And another one that was one that we listened to while we were working the security job together, Desert Rose by Sting. That is one that once you hear it, you just can't get away from it. And it now shows up every once in a while on one of my YouTube playlists. So I'll be sitting there and like the really soft part of it begins, like, yes! And I will sing along with it, but great stuff. But I didn't choose either one of those. The first one went kind of pop for the first two, and then rock for the last one. The first one is I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles by the Proclaimers. Like, I know Family Guy kind of ruined that, but I just heard that on the radio, which is what actually was the impetus for this category.
Yeah, it's funny because that song's been on my mind a lot lately because, I've had this goal this year of walking on the treadmill or at the track 100 miles a month. And obviously the last couple months I've had some setbacks health-wise that I'm getting through. But I still in the back of my mind say, well, even if I miss these 2 months, I can still walk 1,000 miles. Which obviously then takes me to that song. Like, like I'll be better than the Proclaimers one way or another. There were two of them. So,
That's true.
I'll do what I can.
For sure. So that's one that once I hear it, it's stuck. Like, there's no question. Another song, probably from that same era, is the song In a Big Country by Big Country. That's another one that our brother John was always a big fan of. And because of that, I kind of got into it as well. Chris mentioning True by Spandau Ballet.
Oh, that's a great song.
Yeah, that's another one. But yeah, Big Country. I think that's the only hit they had.
Anytime I'm expecting to grow flowers in a desert, I think of that song. It's amazing. It happens every time.
I don't understand all the lyrics of that song, but
me either.
It is really catchy.
I thought it had something to do with like a 90s basketball player.
Yeah, maybe. Possibly. But the other one is a rock song. It is by King's X. It is King. That's one that after I started hearing it, it would show up on my YouTube. I would be just King is coming. Like, it just gets stuck in there and I can't get away from it. But King's X, really talented group as well. And that's just a song that I can't get away from when I hear it.
I think they're an underrated band.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's more like It's Love that hits my mind more regularly. But yeah, they're a very good band.
But that may be a topic we have to revisit. I think it turned out to be maybe a little more, a little easier once you kind of start hearing them and getting into them, I think, to come up with it. But join our Discord. Tell us what your 3 earworm rock, pop, metal songs are. We want to know what you have to say on the topic. And we get some good answers. We will share them on our podcast, which has come to a close for another week. We appreciate you joining us again on the Hard Rock Empire. Again, the news podcast will be back probably in about a week or so. So make sure you tune in for that. And again, join the Discord to find out when it's coming back. And then, of course, next weekend, at least one episode of the Hard Rock Empire, the music of May the 9th. Check local listings. If we do 2 episodes, it'll be the Saturday, Sunday thing again. If it's 1, we'll be with you 1 week from tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, next Sunday on the Nerdcast Empire. Big thanks to Chris for jumping in and joining us. A big thanks to his buddy Jordan. A big thanks to Shane as well. Big thanks to Mike as well for putting all this together. And a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are listening. Also, Stove Lake Media, can't forget them. Big thanks for their continued support of our podcast. We'll be back next weekend with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.